Hi there, it's Kevin with the Rogue Market here with this week's episode of the Market Monday Recap, where I recap the popular video series that I do over at my main channel, the Rogue Deck Builder, and put it into a more of a top 10 TLDR type format. So this week on the Rogue Market, we talked about the potential of a new between modern and standard format that was hinted about in the Gavin Verhey Tolarian Community College interview, where Gavin has said that he would like to see in 10, 15, 20 years a ton of formats in between legacy, modern, standard, where there'll be a variety of ways to play Magic the Gathering. I think a lot of people, myself included, are in desperate desire of a format like this because personally I am not a big fan of how the power level of modern has increased to where it is today, where there is more cards in the card pool from modern forward than there was between when Magic the Gathering and Modern was created. So I think there is a need for that, and I think that also with Arena there will be a format that is made for Arena that could bleed over into Paper for cards that are already programmed and then get rotated in Arena. So we do know that Shadows over Innistrad has been programmed in Magic Arena. So let's go ahead and look at my predictions of 10 cards that I would invest in Ravnica, or in that format, Shadows over Innistrad, all the way to, I guess we could say, Ravnica Allegiance, but specifically looking at cards mainly from the Shadows, Eldritch Moon, and maybe even like Kaladesh blocks that I think that have been rotated, have hit their bottoms, and potentially could go up. So on to my number 10. My number 10 is going to be more of a bulk card. I always like to pick one bulk card. In fact, I'm going to start a video series called Scraping the Barrel, and I think I'm going to do a video specifically about this topic as well, picking cards that are at bulk price right now that I think have the potential to go up from the Shadows forward format if it does come to fruition. So the first one is the Distended Mindbender. So I really like Distended Mindbender. I think the power level is almost there for Modern, and it did see some play in Standard. There were a few of these Emerge type decks that did use the Distended Mindbender, especially in the sideboard. Eldritch Moon is my favorite set to invest in because the supply is extremely low for Eldritch Moon. If you look at the Mythics versus the Mythics out of Shadows of Innistrad, Eldritch Moon, they had a lot more potential to actually go up to the high marks. We have a Liliana that's approaching $50 at the moment, and there are some expensive cards from Eldritch Moon that I think if they were just put in Shadows of Innistrad would be about 75 the price that they are now. So a bulk rare Distended Mindbender, I've been slowly buying these out between the 5 and 8 cent rate on TCG Player. Yes, you can find bulk rare cards for that price on TCG Player. And Distended Mindbender is one that I've quickly snapped up. Many copies at 8 cents a piece. If you find some for 8 cents a piece, it's just because I've missed them. I think the power level of this card is huge in a Shadows forward format because I do think that there will be a viable mid-range strategy, and Emerge is going to fit perfectly in that type of card. We still have the good old Rogue Refiner. Kill the Rogue Refiner for Distended Mindbender. If it's like an Aether, not the Afflux Reservoir, what am I thinking of? The card that got banned, the one, the Spin the Wheel, and the Energy card, where you look at the top cards of your library and can cast one. Distended Mindbender is not a bad target for that either, and the Merge just is really, really, really solid on top of that. So again, these are the type of cards I like to just buy for a couple of pennies. I have an outlet for these type of cards. We run a ton of what we call bulk leagues at our store, where we use bulk cards so that people can get in to these leagues at a very, very discount price. My demographic at my store has a lot of high school and middle school age kids that just can't afford top tier decks in whatever format. That's why we play a lot of Pauper, and that's why we play a lot of wonky formats that utilize bulk rares. And so, I have an out if these don't go up, but Distended Mindbender, even it does see a 2 of or 3 of. Years down the road, if this format does become solidified, eventually the supply will get outstretched by demand, and these could go up to 50 cents, $1, $2 is very reasonable for a card that sees any amount of play in this format. So that's my pick for basically the Scraping the Barrel, finding the bulk rare that has the biggest potential, the Distended Mindbender. On to my number 9. My number 9 is only number 9 because of the price point. The price point is where I don't like it, which is Tireless Tracker. It is pretty much a given that a format that has both Llanowar Elves and Tireless Tracker will probably want to utilize that combo. We still have the Windy Constrictor that can work with Tireless Tracker. We still have a few other of the synergies with +1/+1 counters, and this card is just it's a sideboard card usually in aggro, or what we call on the verge of aggro mid-range, kind of the aggro tempo-based strategies against control. And then mid-range decks just love it in general. I think that Tireless Tracker is played in Modern. It's a little bit better. It's kind of got the pack rat feel to it. It's a lot better if you can set it up and protect it. So formats that can actually utilize that with like Thoughtseize, of course, Tireless Tracker is a little bit better, but I think a Shadows Forward format will do a good job with cards like Assassin Trophy, with cards like Fatal Push, with ways to stop your opponent from Blossoming Defense will be in the format, for example, and ways to protect Tireless Tracker or stop what your opponent's doing by proactively ripping out cards. I think it's going to be a very, very solid card. Again, this would be a lot higher on my list if it wasn't already at the $9 range, but it sees a lot of play in Legacy and Modern, and if there's just another format that utilizes it, I think that the potential is very, very high for this card. This could be one of those $15 rares in a year or 2 years if a format like this does take off. And again, it's just such an easy card to slot in so many different decks. And green looks pretty good from Shadows Forward. It looks extremely good with Llanowar Elves and many other cards with the Tireless Tracker. All right, so another sort of scraping the barrel card, which I was surprised when actually scouring over the list of Frontier of how much this card does see play in various different decks, from some token decks to mainly it's in a dredge deck. And this is my number 8 at Driven to Despair. Driven to Despair is currently played in a prized amalgam deck with they just throw it in the graveyard and it's something you can do with Despair, or it's pretty decent with Narcomoebas and prized amalgams. So we have like an old school sort of lower power level dredge-based strategy that uses prized amalgams and Narcomoebas, and it's pretty good strategy in a format where everything off the top of your library can still just be free. And this is another card that it has a pseudo-free feel to it for at least the despair aspect to it. So the driven part of it says whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card, and the aftermath is they discard a card whenever it deals combat damage. So it's pretty good with Narcomoebas that have evasion, and if a renewable resource like the prize amalgams helps you draw through your deck and whatnot, even if you have to hard cast it. So it's not a bad little cantrip card is what I'm trying to say with the driven. So again, this is one isn't quite, I can't find any copies for super low on TCG Player. They're still, the market price is around 29 cents, which is a lot higher than the Distend Mindbender, so it's not quite at the bulk rate. But this card I always thought was super, super powerful in Standard. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the power level for Modern, but if it does have, it just didn't fit in a deck in Standard, and the power level was low for Modern, but the power level I think was pretty high for Standard. And so if we have this like format that can utilize more cards, more evasive based cards or more token based cards, or just something to push this over the top, I actually really do like Driven to Despair for a long-term format. Yeah, pretty good. And it does see some play in Modern. Typically, I do like cards that have like the double dipping or triple dipping factor. I personally play this in my Noth the Guiltleaf commander deck, so it does have some commander playability as well. On to the next card is the Crypt Breaker. The reason why I like Crypt Breaker, it seems to be the zombie that's the most undercost at the moment. So we still have the Lord of the Curse, we still have Metallic Mimic, we still have plenty of zombies from many blocks. So M19 had a little bit of a zombie theme to it. Amonkhet had a huge zombie theme to it. And of course, the Eldritch Moon and Shadows Innistrad also had a huge zombie tribal to it. And every zombie deck's going to run Crypt Breaker. What I also like about Crypt Breaker is that there is some sort of madness strategy. This is also a good card. So it can easily go different directions. It doesn't have to be just in a tribal deck. It has a lot of implication in many different decks. So a good slot that can be placed in decks. It's also not that bad in any sort of like mono black control where you need to utilize some dead cards that might have been good early, but you need to get something out of them later. Has that pack rat type of feel that you can keep putting if you can protect it, you can keep putting 2/2 black zombie creature tokens by discarding a card, and then eventually get your card advantage back by tapping those zombies to draw cards. So I like Crypt Breaker at its price. The other thing I like about it is I don't think this card's ever going to go down from what it is. So you can see it bottomed out at Rivals of Ixalan, and it's gone all the way up to about $2.35. Had a little bit of a adjustment here. This usually does happen to many cards when a new set comes out. A little bit of the equity gets shifted towards the Crasises, for example, Hydroid Crasises, and things just fall in value just because they're not selling. A lot of shops nowadays are set up with algorithms that if cards aren't selling, they automatically start to decrease the price. I've noticed that with both Star City Games and Card Kingdom, for example. rather than having someone just to, I'm sure they do have someone that manages their prices, but it's just another safety guard or way to kind of push sales to have that sort of algorithm. NTGO bots have been using this sort of thing for years and years. So if you see some dips like this, that's usually the case. It's just that when it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, where the market kind of shifts towards the shinier things at the moment. But Crit Breaker, I still think that this little upwards trend will continue, regardless of a new format, as it is just a really good zombie card. Not quite modern playable, I don't think, but look at that. Has seen play in Legacy Reanimator. On to my first mythic. This is Daehee, the Harbinger. And the reason I like Daehee so much is the price point. This is the all-time low of Daehee. Daehee has seen play in Modern. Mardu Pyromancer, Living End here. There actually was a deck that just a kind of a prison deck that used to use Daehee and get out Emrakul. So keep that in mind. It has seen the power level for Modern. In fact, that's what this huge spike was here. As it hit a Modern deck right out the bats. I think here as well it started to see some more Modern play between Aether Revolt and Kaladesh, and it has just been going down. And in my opinion, it really is that out of sight, out of mind type card. There's not a lot of EDH cards that want to utilize it because unfortunately they pigeonholed the red-white into this hyper-aggressive type strategy usually when you're in Commander, and here he just doesn't slot very well in those particular decks. I have seen it being played in a lot of Jeskai lists, though, especially like the Jeskai Walkers that use like Narset. It's just another way to utilize Daehee, and like Brea decks and things I've seen Daehee in as well, because the looting isn't terrible with Daehee, and the ability to get artifacts and creatures with a negative is very, very, very high. So again, this card's got to settle somewhere reasonably. It's a good Planeswalker. Usually with Planeswalkers that have any sort of utility in even casual formats, they rarely go below 5. So I'm liking Daehee at its price point anyways, and I'm thinking that it's going to start going up, and if we do see a format, this is going to be Jeskai control decks, it's going to be Naya mid-range decks, those type of things in the format, which I highly, highly suspect there will be plenty of decks that can slot Daehee in a Shadows Forward format, and if not, it's a great sideboard card for the -2 to be utilized against exiling enchantments, tapped artifacts, or tapped creatures. On to my next mythic. This one is also one that has gone way down in value since its height, and this is Daehee Lee. Daehee Lee is heavily played in Frontier, and the deck that it's played in is pretty much intact. This is just the good old the Daehee Lee combo that uses Feldar Guardian and Daehee Lee, and Daehee Lee also is near its lowest it's ever been. I mean, it kind of was low after it got banned, and then it has gone up, I think, after really the banning, and then it settled way down to the $4 mark. It is out of Kaladesh. I kind of warn people about Kaladesh because the supply of Kaladesh is so high for people that are trying to get the masterpieces. However, you can see if we zoom this in a little bit that the trend has looked like it started to go back up from Rivals of Ixalan to Guilds of Ravnica, and then has gone back down. Ultimate Masters had a huge it made a big chunk of the MTG market just completely drop because of equity being moved towards Ultimate Masters. And I think those type of cards are going to start to recover. And Daehee Lee's also seen play in Modern. So you still have this Kiki Jiki combo that can use it for the Feldar Guardian as well. And a lot of this is one of the tier decks in Frontier. So we can look for Frontier as inspiration of what kind of type of archetypes we will start to see. A lot of Frontier, though, still the power level Konzatark here is much, much higher. That Cons through Origins is higher than we have, I would say, from Battle for Zendikar on. So Frontier's a good baseline, but it's not going to be 100% representative of what we're going to see. Now we're starting to get onto the good stuff. This one is only this low on my list. I believe it's number 5 because of also the price point, which is Eldritch Evolution. But this is a card that just gets better and better and better and better with more cards. And we already have a huge toolbox type theme, and it does actually even go in that Daehee Lee deck that I was talking about earlier. So Eldritch Evolution Daehee Lee for Frontier. I like the price. I like the price point a little bit lower because its all-time low is $1.35. So it has gone up. This is another card that sees a lot of play in EDH Commander, and it even does see Modern in various Kiki Evolution decks, Counters Companies decks, and just ways to establish a lot of very good combos in the format. So if it's powerful enough for Modern, it definitely is powerful enough for a Shadows Forward format. And there are already, like I said, some very degenerate things you can do with Eldritch Evolution. You have a lot of just value creatures that want to die and then go towards something bigger, and you can establish a ton of 2-card combos. There's plenty of them even in Standard at the moment that could utilize Eldritch Evolution. So this is a card I think will take off the quickest if there is a Shadows Forward format. And if the price point was a little bit lower, this would definitely be, higher up. 5 is still pretty high up. On to my number 4. This one is just there because if we're going to have a pre-ban list, I think this one will be included on it. And you could say the same thing for Daehee Lee with Feldar Guardian. We'll have to wait and see. So keep that in mind with Daehee Lee, and also keep that in mind with this one, which is Smugglers Chopper. Smugglers Chopper's been going up, 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 up. And so after it bottomed out at the $1.84, I mean, it's had that slight trajectory up since Guild of Ravnica. It's because it started to see more and more play in Modern and in Legacy. In some of these, I've seen it played in Merfolk. I've seen it played in Soul Sisters. Look like there's some sort of white black zombies deck, some aggro decks that utilize the Smuggler's Copter. Is a great card just to filter through your deck. And I think the Smuggler's Copter is a lot more fair in a Shadows Forward format because of cards like a Braid and Fatal Push that exist when Smuggler's Copter after Smuggler's Copter was banned. So we never really were able to test out the waters with those type of cards, whereas a ton of other cards, like even Lightning Strike, that kills Smuggler's Copter, which keeps it way more in check than before. And a lot of Artifact Hate, like even the Knight, Reclamation Sage, those type of things that I think can keep it in check. So I don't think it will be banned in a Shadows Forward format, but it will be just one of those cards that almost every deck or plenty of decks can just utilize it. And I mean, there are plenty of cards that even look like a Mara. And Smuggler's Copter seems like a pretty good combo. Crewing Smuggler's Copter with a Mara leaves you back a 1/1 token. Tons and tons and tons of synergies for this card, and it's the power level again is just kind of awkward for Modern because Modern doesn't really have that much of a use for a card like Smuggler's Copter. But if there is a Shadows Forward format, this is the card that absolutely the format will enjoy, and it will be good with Madness and any sort of looting type decks that want things in the graveyard. We're even thinking about like Drakes, for example, I think could use this card. Alrighty, so now we're getting to the good stuff. Number 3 I really like because of the price point. This is Grim Flare. We have Grim Flare at the all-time low, and that's really because it's fallen out of favor in most of these type of decks. I think after Bloodbraid Elf came out, it pushed out Grim Flare in a lot of those type of slots, and it's just not a place where Standard wants it. But the power level of Grim Flare is definitely very, very high for a Shadows Forward format. It's a 2-drop that is going to be played is usually 4 ofs in a deck, becomes a 4/4 quite quickly. It's this format's Goyf. It's this format's value creature that becomes into a beater really, really quick. So it also helps you be able to loot to find the right stuff, throw stuff in your graveyard. Perfect for this sort of rock type strategy, or I'm sure Abzan, Sultai, Jund are going to be archetypes in that. We have very, very powerful. Green is a very powerful color, Shadows Forward, in that type of what we call aggro 2.0, not quite the most, what we call balls out aggro, but the next step up of these type of decks. Goes in attrition decks quite well too, goes in the Emrakul type decks, and for that reason I like Grim Flare. Well, the reason why Emrakul's not on my list, by the way, is Emrakul's a $20 card right now, believe it or not, and I don't like the price point. But Grim Flare's price point is just right on spot to where I think this is a good card to start investing in. It could come back into favor into Modern, by the way, and could have a price spike due to that. All right, now we're on to the really good stuff, and this is my number 1. This is actually my number 1 because I think I'm off here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yes, so Grim Flare is my number 2. So my number 1 is the Soulscar Mage. Soulscar Mage is a card that you can get in for, you don't want to get in at $1.65. You can find them all over the place because they were included in the Challenger deck. And if you can get in around 50 cents, which I've been getting in on the Soulscar Mage, I absolutely like that price point. They're seeing play in Modern, in Wizards decks, and in Legacy, and in Wizards decks. And I think that if there is that Shadows Forward format, which we're predicting with this video, the Soulscar Mage will be that 1-drop for the red decks. It's just much better than, and it works also with the Get You Lava Runner. It allows you to play Wizard's Lightning. It has a lot of synergy with the Goblin Chain Whirler, which I also think will be a big card in this format. and the price point is just pretty low, even though the supply is very, very high for this card. But I think this is a no-brainer. You go with things that already have proven themselves. This card has actually been wrecking it in Frontier. So if it's extremely powerful for Frontier, I don't think that the decks, the Frontier burn decks, are that much better than what we have going for it right now. Light up a stage, the Soul Scar Mage can just attack in and do the 1 damage. And then if you cast it after or before combat damage, if you've done damage, it will actually get the prowess with the Soul Scar Mage. And so same thing with the skewer. So we'll have that kind of like fiery temper skewer. We'll have like 12. What would they call it then? What, like 16 bolt in Shadows Forward. If you have ways to discard through Smugglers Chopper, for example, it's going to be a very, very quick deck that's going to keep a lot of these degenerate combos in check. And I think it is needed for the format. It'll allow mid-range decks to kind of probably prey on these type of decks, and then these hyper aggressive red decks to really prey on the slower combo or control decks. So anyway, I like Soul Scar Mage. All of these investments are definitely due to the big if the format like this does end up happening. And if so, you know, there might be more cards to see play for this, but after scouring over just kind of the list of cards, these are the cards I really think are at their lows at the moment and have the most potential going up. So a little bit, we'll go back to the 10 is Distend Mindbender. This is kind of my bulk rare call. You can find these for 8 cents all over the TCG player. The Tireless Tracker would be, I think is just the most safe card for the format. It's definitely going to see play. There's no way Tireless Tracker does not see play. Even white green humans, for example, could run it. Driven to Despair, this is just because based upon dredge decks being viable and really not really having much that they gain earlier than Shadows of Innistrad. If you look at the Frontier deck lists, they're mainly Shadows forward anyway. Driven Despair is in those decks as a 4 of and is a very, very low cost card. Crypt Breaker, just a very easy card to slot in many different decks, has a lot of utility, and Zombies is great. Daehee, same thing, a very good sideboard slot, or just a very powerful Planeswalker. Daehee Lee, right now works with the combo and is the lowest it's ever been. Eldritch Evolution, utility card, utility card, utility card, and the price point is pretty decent. Smugglers Chopper, power level is off the charts compared to the cards around it. Grim Flayer, I would kind of say the same thing. Very, very good 2-drop slot card that is this format's kind of Tarmogoyf. The Soul Scar Mage is definitely the card, the 1-drop of choice for the red deck wins. Hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you don't mind if you can hear the dogs bark in the background. I'm out of town with my laptop and not in a place with dumbed down sound, but thought I'd get a video out there for the Market Monday recap, and hope you enjoyed this. This has been Kevin with the Rogue Market. Thanks for watching.